And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with Mark Ireland. Mark, you talk about 5 pillars of healing. What are they?
I actually touched on that a little earlier, but I'll expand here. So once we started helping parents heal, and after a few years saw kind of the process where we'd see people come in that were just despondent or in a really dark place, and then just see the progress of them to where they'd be much better, in a much better place after a few years, I kind of observed certain things that were contributing to that, if you will, in terms of their healing process. So the first one I mentioned earlier was, it's important for people to have support, loving support, hopefully from family and friends. Not everybody has that, though, but that is one of the pillars if you have that. And, I think the thing is that family members have somebody who's gone through that. It's just important to be there for them as much as you can. The second one is to make relationships with someone who's been through the same thing. And we come through with that because we offer meetings and things like that and conferences. And so when folks can relate to other people who have been through the same thing, it makes a big difference, especially when it's been a child. Child and spouse are probably the two hardest to deal with. The third pillar is I touched on earlier, which is service. And then it's like doing something more than just taking care of yourself, but reaching out to try and do more to help someone else. And it could be anything, but I see a lot of the parents will set up a foundation or something to support a fundraising effort that sometimes was on something their child liked a lot, whether it was an activity or athletic thing, or whether it was for cancer research for the specific type of cancer their child passed from, or just things like that. So it could be anything, and some of them actually, become affiliate leaders in different cities for helping parents heal. The fourth pillar is letting go of, I guess, feelings of guilt or, resentment towards someone else, because really in the end, it just holds you back. It's not helping you. It's hindering you to hold on to that anger or that feeling of that. Almost every parent feels like they could have done something when in reality they probably couldn't. Most of them couldn't, to change that outcome, whatever it may have been. So they got to let go of that. And then that fifth pillar, that's the hope pillar. And that comes from, in my view, having, whether it's a faith-based thing or just from evidence of the afterlife, that that's not it. There's more, and your loved one still exists in some form. And you can still have a relationship of sorts, maybe different than it was in the past, but it still can be there and still exist. So those are the 5 things that I detected out of the folks coming through our program that showed signs of really improving drastically during the time that they came to our meetings and things.
Must you have all 5 of the pillars to heal?
I do. I mean, I don't know if everyone does. There's going to be some folks that maybe have an estranged family, so they wouldn't have that first pillar. Some folks get stuck in that thing where they're still angry at someone else and they can't get past that, or they're still blaming themselves, and they're in a deep, dark place because they just can't move past that. So that's the tough part. And not everybody's going to have all 5, but maybe if they can have 3 or 4, it's going to be better than having none. But the ones that people get hung up on can be the toughest. And obviously, too, if somebody's totally like an atheist or something and they're not open-minded, they may not get that 5th pillar, so they're not going to have that relief. But I have seen a lot of people come in who didn't have any kind of belief set before and then switched over after getting sufficient evidence that there is more.
All right, let's go to calls for you. First-time caller Troy is with us in New Mexico. Hi, Troy. Go ahead.
Hi. I was wondering if dreams have premonition meaning, if they'll come true, because lately I've been having a lot of nightmares of a family member's death. Dreams
can be precognitive. I've had I've had some before, but also I've had dreams like that aren't not necessarily precognitive, but can just be maybe due to stress or something like that. So I would say it's hard to say for sure. I mean, if you see a pattern develop where you have that, and then later on the person you dreamed about does pass, then you'll know that you have precognitive abilities in a dream state. And the dream state is one where a lot of folks are going to get more of a connection, whether it's through psychic information or connecting with loved ones who have passed, just because you're not in a waking state with all the stimuli that we have between smartphones and TVs and cars and everything else. But the dream state can be an effective place to pick up on other information like that. So I can't tell you definitively one way or the other. I think the evidence will tell you down the line, and then if it does happen, then you'll know, and then if you get additional ones, you might know. Now, the other question is, did the dream give you an indication if it's something that could be prevented? Because maybe it's a warning where somebody needs to go in to see the doctor or something like that, So I don't know if you got that out of the dream or not.
And Mark, if she's had other precognitive dreams that have occurred, then it may also tell you something else.
Exactly. Yep. And I don't know if that's the case or not.
Let's go to Tricia in Salem, Massachusetts, east of the Rockies. Hi, Tricia.
Hi, George. Good evening. Yes, I called for another reason, and then he put me through, so I feel obligated to respond. What was your guest name right now? Mark Island?
Mark Ireland.
Just like the country.
Like the country.
Oh, yes, Island. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for all your work. It's wonderful that people are doing this kind of work. And I wish you the best of luck on October 14th.
Okay, thank you so much.
Eclipse.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Tricia. Joe in Montgomery, California. Hey, Joseph, go ahead.
Thank you, George. I didn't know I moved to Montgomery. I usually live in Monterey.
Oh, you're right.
It's a beautiful city.
Actually, Monterey is beautiful. Beautiful town.
Yes, it is.
I want to know if Mark, if your people, if you ever encounter a soul that doesn't want to go into the light, that they want to be free and they don't want to reincarnate, and if you had any souls that have, let's say, an aversion towards going into, let's say, what they call heaven. Also, did you ever contact people who were lost and they weren't dead, they were lost, and to help find them? And when people get murdered, did you ever contact a soul where they can tell what happened and maybe catch the criminal? That's a few things. And also, when I do my healing work, I allow my clients, they go into a trance state and they talk to their loved ones. And I find that the resolution and the closure is more complete because they know that they talk to them and they could make that contact and resolve whatever issues. Thank you, George, for taking my call.
On the last point, there's a process that was developed by a doctor. I can't remember his name at the moment, but it incorporates EMDR and gets the patient or the person seeking therapy to an altered state where they do often experience a direct connection with a loved one who's passed. I talked to a gentleman who went through that and actually got a piece of information from his deceased son about a specific name of a book that the son asked him to ask Mom about, the color code book that he didn't know about. And afterward, he brought it up to his wife, and it turned out that the son and the mom had been discussing this book called the Color Code book, which I guess had to do with colors and their characteristics or something. But I think that can be helpful to do that kind of a thing in a therapy. I know a lot of mediums are providing instruction on how people could try and connect directly And it's basically a meditative process to get yourself into a state of receptiveness. But he threw a bunch of other questions out about somebody not going into the light. I can't speak to that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I've heard of people talking about are there earthbound spirits, or people don't cross over because they don't know that they've passed. Possibly, I can't say definitively that that's the case, but I think it's a possibility. I'm trying to think of what else he wanted to know.
Is there a hell mark on the other side?
Personally, I don't think there's a hell as like a fire and brimstone kind of place of eternal punishment. I think that's been kind of an artifact that the church, may have embellished a bit for control. That's just my feeling. I think, there might be what would be a hellish realm would be a lower level realm where someone who, let's just say if you've murdered people or done horrible things.
Evil person.
Yeah, you're going to be with like people, I guess, on the other side. I would think it's kind of like specific gravity. You gravitate towards where you fit and where you're supposed to be. And I don't think that it's hopeless for folks like that, but they're creating their own kind of hell in a way. But I don't think that that type of hell actually would exist. And basically, I don't think the other side is necessarily a physical realm. I think your soul, I think, is immaterial. And in other realms, maybe they have physical laws or things like we do in this world, but it's kind of, how do we even know that it would be the same kind of setup as this world? We talk about a fiery hell or anything like that. Well, that's based on this 3D world we live in and the ability to burn fires and stuff like that. So I don't think that there is a hell as such. I think there are more hellish conditions that certain people may find themselves in, but it's of their own making, and I don't think it's eternal.
Is there a devil, in your opinion?
I don't know that there's a singular evil entity. I think there's definitely evil, and there's people have projected the idea of the devil for so long. All I can say is I think there is evil, and I'm not saying it's the source it's from one particular source like a devil. I think it's the opposite of being connected to God or the highest realms of the divine. It's like the opposite, or being cut off in a way. So I think it's like the absence of light, I guess, is what I would say, is how I perceive that evil and darkness. I don't know that there's one specific entity. Just like I don't view God as a person necessarily, like an entity. I think God is much bigger and more than that, and we can't even understand maybe the full nature of what God is if we use that word. Those are my thoughts. I'm not saying I know everything, but that's how I perceive it.
Let's go to Kathy in New Jersey. Hi, Kathy. Go ahead.
Hi, Mark. Hi, George.
Hi.
I've had a lot of loss this year, more than ever. I was wondering if there's any message you could give me, or.
Well, he's not a medium, so he's not doing that. But
I like I said, sometimes I've had spontaneous things happen, but I'm not a practicing medium, so I wouldn't want to throw something out there. If something came to me, I would share it, but I'm just not. I don't do that on a normal basis. But I would just say I'm sorry that you've gone through that. It is something we all face in life, and I hope you're doing better. If you do want to connect with somebody who's good, check out my certified medium site, and then maybe you can get a reading book with one of those folks.
How many friends or loved ones have you lost, Kath?
This year has been about 8 people.
Oh my gosh!
And it just keeps happening. But okay, I will check that out. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
It's not easy. I mean, even grief with losing a friend is powerful, isn't it, Mark?
Oh, totally. Or you hear about somebody at work that you talk to who's maybe in another office or whatever recently died, and then it's like kind of just surprising or stunning, but it is a reality of this world that we live in. It's a temporary visit here, so we have to accept that and be prepared. I think it's kind of cliche to say, live every day as if it's your last, or every one day at a time kind of thing. But there's some truth to that too.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Make the most of the time that you have. And for me, I think recognize that we all have a path and purpose, and it's important to fulfill that and do as much as we can while we're here, because we don't know when that time's going to be up.
Let's go to Walter in Graham, Washington. Hey, Walt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, George. Yes, I was calling to find out if Mark has, if you have ever had this experience or know of a legitimate medium or persons that in history or just that you know of that can say, hey, hello, I have Jesus here with me. He wants to say something to you, or I have Mary here with me, or a saint with me. Do you know of any people in history or that were able to do that? I mean, the only people I know of that were able to do it were the children of Fatima, but anyway, you might know of someone.
Has that ever come up, Mac?
I have heard of some mediums that say that they do work with Jesus or channel messages from Jesus. There's a whole book written on that. It's called I can't think of it, but
that's okay.
I can't think of names right now. I apologize, but I have heard of some mediums that say that they do that or have connected with Jesus and channel Jesus. I don't know how you'd verify that. I guess you just have to go by the purity of the message that's coming through and see if it's Christ-like.
Do you believe in the angelic realm, Mark?
I do. I mean, I don't think necessarily they're flying around with wings, but I think I talked earlier about this stratification, I think, or having different planes. So I think the higher levels of consciousness or goodness, purity, gravitate upward, and the angelic realm is mixed in with that. I think we get help from and guidance from those sources if we're open to that and we ask for that. And I think it's there for us to connect with too. I mean, sometimes mediums talk about spirit guides, and I would think maybe those in some cases are deceased ancestors or people with greater knowledge than us, but maybe in other cases they're actually angels,
Mark, we're going to take a short break and come back and take final calls with you in just a moment here on Coast to Coast. Mark's website has all the links to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, his books, and also the Medium Certification Program. And welcome back to our final segment with Mark Ireland as we talk about the persistence of the soul, and his other work is called Soul Shift. Truly remarkable. Mark, what would you say in all that has happened to you has been the most enlightening thing?
Wow. Before I answer that, I was going to say for the last gentleman's question, the book I was going to refer to was called A Course in Miracles.
Okay.
So if you wanted to, that's what that was. Really what's been most enlightening is the overall, it's the mosaic of all of it coming together, because I've had so many experiences of synchronicity, signs, messages, personal experiences. I've had some dream visits with my son. One in particular was more vivid than waking reality, and that happened about 1.5 years after his passing. But I think it's the collective effect of all that, and that it just keeps happening. These things keep popping up all the time just to let me know that he's still there, and there's still a relationship. But I guess you have to be open to it, to receiving that and acknowledging that you're getting that. I think if somebody shuts down and they don't and can't accept that what they're getting is a sign of connection, then maybe it's just never going to be anything they notice or pay attention to. But again, I think it's just the overall combination of everything I've experienced, read, and been through.
Let's go to final calls for you. Karen in Russian River, California. Hi, Karen. Go ahead.
Hi. Nice to talk to you. You know, I've asked my son for a sign, and he's never given me a sign.
When did he pass, Karen?
I lost him a year ago in November.
How old was he?
He was 51.
51 years old. Mark, can you give her any advice?
Sometimes signs are subtle. You'd have to, they could be in some cases a flashing light. They mess with electronics sometimes. My son, right after he passed, in the middle of the night, out of the blue, the stereo system came on and started playing some of his music with no one there to turn it on, and there was no electrical outage. It could be he comes to you in a dream. What I would recommend, and this has worked for me and other people, before you go to bed, make a prayerful request that you get a visit from him and that you remember it the next day. Give that a try. That's worked for a lot of folks. It's worked for me when I had that experience that I just described. So try that. And if you don't get anything there, you might also try and see if you connect with him in a meditative state. And what you can do there is just sit in a very quiet space by yourself in a chair, close your eyes, and then just ask him to come into your space. And then just keep your eyes closed, and then just visualize a peaceful, serene area or place where the two of you would go in the past, and see if that works for you. But I think the dream is probably the easiest way to do that. So give that a try.
What if the spirit's not ready yet? Is that possible, Mark?
In terms of whether someone's ready or not, I've seen people get messages immediately, within a day or two, and others, longer. But I think it maybe has more to do with the person's ability to understand how to connect, or how to get a message through to somebody. I figure part of the reason why I've had so much, and it's been so good for me in terms of having evidence, is because my dad used to he was the receiver on this side of the veil. So he kind of knew how it worked. And I have to assume he has a better understanding of the process and can get more stuff through. Even as much as my son has communicated, too, my dad has even more. And if you remember what I shared early on, how my uncle said the message came from my dad and not my son, but it was relaying it. So I think it may just be, if someone passes and they're in a new environment right away and they don't know how things work, maybe they don't get how to do that. They maybe need another spirit to help them understand how to convey that kind of thing.
It could take a couple of years, can it?
Yeah, I don't know that time even exists over there, at least as we know it. But in terms of our
time,
yeah, I could see it taking some time. I think that first year we had probably more than any other year since, but I've still had stuff coming periodically. And then again, I know a lot of mediums, and I'm not asking them for readings, but they'll just spontaneously give me messages and things. This was just maybe a month or two ago. I bought a new guitar, and I was on Facebook, and a medium that I didn't even really know, she brought up something that I had just had done to the guitar, and it was correct. It had to do with the fretboard, and the guitar was brand new, but the action was too high. I don't know if you know anything about guitars, but the strings were too high off the fretboard, and I wanted them lowered, so I took it to a place to get it adjusted. So she brought up something like that. She says, your son's saying this, So it's hard to say when the right time is, just in terms of normal process. If somebody's going to go to a medium, though, I would typically say 3 to 6 months after the passing, and that's more for the sitter's benefit, just so that they're emotionally ready for that process.
Let's go to John in Dubuque, Iowa. Hello, John. Go ahead.
How you doing?
Great, John. Thank you.
So I did 11 years in the Marines.
Thank you for serving, John.
And I lost some friends, and I heard you guys talking about EMDR.
Dr. Alan Botkin, that's
that therapy, EMDR therapy, which is a rapid eye movement.
Yeah.
Yes.
So at night, while you're sleeping, your eyes go back and forth, and then your brain computes stress.
Is that the REM cycle, Mark?
I believe so. I'm not a sleep expert, but yeah, I think that's similar. So I think, when they do the MDR, it probably is getting you you're getting into an altered state, maybe like where you're, like if it was a sleep state and you're just about to wake up, or you're kind of that in-between sleep and awake state. That's when people are most receptive. And it's interesting you bring that up, because this Dr. Alan Botkin, I couldn't remember the name earlier, but he's the one that kind of discovered it by accident. And he was actually working with some Vietnam vets who had horrible PTSD. And he got several of them to get into this state where they actually, one had lost a little girl over there who he kind of adopted. She was a Vietnamese girl, and she was killed over there. And she came to him in this state. Another man had seen someone he'd killed in battle and was forgiven by the person. So it was kind of life-changing for some of these people that had that done. It might be a good option for someone who can't connect in some other way, or really needs that. They're going through a tough spot and they need a little booster.
Mark, had you not gone through the personal tragedy that you told us about with your son, do you think you still would have this belief system that you have today?
Yeah, I would have it, because I experienced it as a kid growing up with my dad. But probably what wouldn't have happened is I wouldn't have gone on this journey and kind of re-explored my dad's field, met the researchers and the mediums in the field, and written books and done public speaking, and co-founded of Helping Parents Heal. So none of that stuff probably would have happened. So that's another reason I feel like it was kind of maybe part of a bigger plan, and I had to go through the suffering to get me to do what I needed to do. But also, as much as I'd love to have my son back here in a physical form, I do understand what it's like, and I can relate to other parents and be helpful to them now, because I have experienced it.
Absolutely.
And it was the catalyst.
Indeed. Mark, where do people get your book, The Persistence of the Soul?
Well, you can go to my website, markirelandauthor.com, or you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It's available as of October 10th. You could pre-order it if you want, or just order it on the day it's released. But,
all right, my friends. Keep in touch with us, all right?
Thank you so much.
Mark Ireland, his website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com. It's markirelandauthor.com, just if you want to write that down. But we've got that link for you at coasttocoastam.com. It's very simple for you. For Michael Cosio, Tom Danheiser, Dan Galante, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Burrows, Tim Banal, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.